rolling back threat climate
change,
where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
We'll restore
and protect life on land,
the forests,
animals, the earth itself.
With peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
Where all countries and we their people
work together
in partnerships of all kinds
to make these goals a reality
for everyone, everywhere.
These are the United Nations global goals
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Let's make it happen.
We can be.
We must be.
The first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done. The global goals.
A 15-year plan
for everyone, everywhere.
With no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere
lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
Where no one wakes in the morning
asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die
of diseases we know how to cure.
And where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world
where everyone
goes to school. And education gives us the knowledge
and skills
for a fulfilling life.
We will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
to thrive
and be powerful
and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is headed back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
and proper toilets
at home, at school, and at work.
We will live in a world where
there is sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
and power for the whole planet.
Without destroying the planet.
We will live in a world where economies prosper.
And new wealth
leads to decent jobs
for everyone.
And we will live in a world
where our industry,
our infrastructure, and our
best innovations
are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
where prejudices and extremes of inequality
are defeated
inside our countries
and between different countries.
Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
Where we replace
what we consume.
Planet where we put back
what we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back threat
climate change.
Where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
We'll restore
and protect life on land,
the forests,
animals, the earth itself.
With peace between and inside countries.
Where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
With everyone equal before the law.
Where all countries and we their people
work together
in partnerships of all kinds
to make these goals a reality
for everyone, everywhere.
These are the United Nations global goals
for sustainable development.
Let's get to work.
Let's make it happen.
Good day, everyone. You're welcome to this opening ceremony this very afternoon. Special greetings to you and congratulations to you on the starting of your journey as a fellow for the Teach4SDG program of AIIDEV Africa. Special congratulations once again to each and every one of you that has made it onto this phase. We received quite a large number of applications, but if you're here this evening on this opening ceremony, it means that you are worthy of being celebrated because you have given the different and specific and distinct value different from every other person that has given you a space on this program. So once again, on behalf of the leadership of AIIDEV Africa, I want to welcome you to this opening ceremony this evening. And just as a little word of encouragement, it may happen that maybe many of you are yet unfamiliar with AIIDEV Africa. I want to tell you this is the Advanced Initiative for International Development, when we prioritize the involvement of each and everyone on the SDGs, the global goals, especially now as we stand halfway to the 2030 agenda. Of course, we would understand that there are still more to do if we want to achieve these agendas that are set before us. And this is why AIIDEV Africa, we have decided to create different thematic streams of programs, projects, innovators, and accelerators that would bring in the opportunity to contribute to the global goals. So when we have you on this program this evening, I want you to understand that you are an impact maker, and henceforth you have become a contributor towards achieving the global goals. Over the next couple of weeks that will be on this program, we'll be looking at all right. So sorry for that. That was a technical glitch there. So I just want to quickly say that for you to be well integrated into the program, I want to encourage you to follow AIIDEV Africa across our different social media platforms as we continue to engage on this program. And of course, I'd like to quickly hand you over to the co-founder of AIIDEV Africa, that is Madam Ebonlua, for the welcome address. Once again, I congratulate each and every one of you, and I say that it's really going to be an exciting journey over this couple of weeks that will be on this fellowship together. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Mayowa, for that brief welcome speech. I would also like to give a very brief welcome speech, particularly to our esteemed teachers who have dedicated their time and their energies to ensuring that they are also change makers into achieving these SDGs that everyone is talking about. Personally, I believe that the core of SDGs and the awareness of SDGs generally, they lie heavily on education and educating the future leaders. And this means that we have to sustain the development that we are currently building by investing in the future leaders. So in order to do this, we need the help of teachers, because they are the ones that continually engage with the future leaders. And this is why Teach4SDG project is trying to address this gap and ensure that this next generation, they are equipped with all the knowledge that they need and the skills that they need to continue wherever we stop in this development journey. So I just want to briefly talk about this project, this program. You know that you've probably gone through the outline. It's going to entail some series of workshops, training sections, online resources, and all of these are for elementary and secondary school teachers. And this is not just for you to have a life-changing experience, but also to impact your students or your pupils, and also the community and the organization that you represent. And secondly, I would like you to know that there is a phase, which is the second phase of the program, that is the SDG activation. And in this phase of the Teach for SDG, it means that we are just going to encourage all the educators to try to engage in something practical with your students. Everything that you've learned so far from the professionals and the experienced people about the sustainable development, you have to practicalize them with your students, engage them, and teach them how to actualize ideas and plans as well. And lastly, we also have the student learning phase. Now, this phase is just finding a way to incorporate all these things into the existing curriculum. Now, in Africa, generally, we have a curriculum that I personally see as stale. And for us to meet up with this global journey, we have to try to match up with other parts of the world, which are pretty much based on student learning approach. You know, you connect with your students individually. You try to know what passion they have that is connecting to SDG, and how you can help them develop these things that they have, these talents that they have already in them. So, and also in the curriculums that we have, the maths, the sciences, finding a way to connect all these things with different SDGs that we have is also going to help us a lot. So after all these things that I've said, I know I've been able to clarify that you are not just here on this program just for yourself, but for your students as well. And I hope that you know that because of this act that you've done, you are an hero to them and to the community, including your organization. And please, talking about the great people that you are going to encounter in this program, we have one big personality on this call today, and I would like to introduce him. And I would like you to also join me in welcoming Professor Patrick Walsh, who is the Vice President of Education and Director of the SDG Academy at the UN Sustainable Development Solution Network, the SDSN, and he is on secondment from University College Dublin, where he is a full professor of international development studies and director of the Center for Sustainable Development Studies in UCD Dublin. He has received his PhD in economics from London School of Economics and Political Science. He has held academic positions in Trinity College Dublin, KU Leuven, Harvard University, and Columbia University. That is quite a profile. He has also held positions in the United Nations, European Commissions, IMF, and World Bank. But currently, his focus is on sustainable development education that is informed by science, practice, and policy, which makes him the perfect person to welcome you to this program. Thank you, Professor Walsh. Over to you.
No, thank you so much for those very kind comments. I always think when somebody reads out my biopic, it's actually more of a reflection that I'm very old rather than that I've actually achieved anything. So I think there's time for everyone to fill in those biopics. So I'm very grateful for the invitation. And you guys are an important partner, obviously, for the SDG Academy, and it's always a joy to work with you. And I absolutely agree with the opening remarks that, you know, teachers are so important. So congratulations to everyone who's onboarding, who's going to start their journey on this program. But, you know, we can all reflect on our own life journeys, and we can all think of important teachers. And there was always, either elementary or secondary or in university, there's always been a teacher who's inspired us, who's guided us, and inspires us. And I think, you know, congratulations to everyone who wants to explore the SDGs, but also to depart that knowledge to the next and future generations. So the real heroes are the teachers, and we know that. Every one of us know that. So today, I guess I have a few slides. So I just want to explain to you, I guess, what SDSN is, the SDG Academy is, give you a little bit of background to what the SDGs are, and then also tell you a little bit of what's happening in our common agenda, as we call it, which is the summits that have been happening, you know, the Transforming Education Summit, to the Midpoint Review last year, to the Summit of the Future in September, just to give people a sense of what's happening in that sort of big picture. But your point is very well taken, that this is the global movement, but what really matters, and this is why the teachers matter so much, is how do you actually repurpose this, put it in the local context, into your own languages, into your own cultures, and reimagine the agenda at a local level. And that's something that can only be done through a program like this, basically. So that's why it's so important. Hopefully you can see my slides okay. So here we are. So my name is Patrick Paul Walsh, called Paul, and that's a long story. And like you say, I'm on secondment from University College Dublin, working on the education portfolio of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network, SDSN. Just to explain a little bit what SDSN is. So originally, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, who's the president, he's a university professor in Columbia University. He's been an advisor to Secretary General, starting with Kofi Annan, and then Ban Ki-moon, and now Antonio Guterres. And coming out of the Millennium Development Goals, particularly in 2012, the future we want, people were saying, well, what's going to replace the Millennium Development Goals? And they decided that it was going to be quite a big consultative process, not just of governments, but also of all stakeholders, including civil society and academia and so on. But there was a feeling that, you know, you can have these consultative processes and these recommendations, but there should be some form of academic and legal oversight, because there's already treaties been signed. You know, people should be looking for official data sources, should be looking for appropriate science and so on, a legal framework. So it was decided that a group of academics and lawyers, let's say, would actually oversee a lot of the consultative processes and the outcome documents, and actually synthesize them in what was called the Secretary General Synthesis Report. And that would go to the co-facilitators, which happened to be at the time an Irish a permanent rep, an ambassador called David Donoghue, and the Kenyan ambassador Kimau, the permanent rep to the UN from Kenya. So in that synthesis document, at the time, SDSN was co-chaired by Amina Mohammed, who obviously is now the Deputy Secretary General of the UN. And like in some sense, the mandate of SDSN stopped in November 2014, but after the SDG agreement, the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in September, and the Paris Agreement in December in Paris on climate change, SDSN is more like a think tank that reports into the Secretary General to an area under Amina Mohammed. And we basically, our mandate is to use academia and thought leaders to mobilize partnerships of government and corporates and civil society at all levels of governance, not just global level, but regional, national, and local level, to implement the important global agreements on biodiversity, climate change, and sustainable development, the SDGs. In today's world, we do have 1,900 knowledge institutions across the world, and they're organized into about 80 national chapters, and we do have some regional chapters. And a lot of the work that you might be familiar with is we do policy analysis and data work on measuring the SDGs and progress at different levels of governance. The SDG Academy is responsible for education, and I'll explain that to you in a second. And our offices currently are in New York, Paris, and Kuala Lumpur. And you can go on to the website unsdsn.org, and you can have a look at, you know, the history of the organization, where it came from. In terms of, I must have deleted, yeah. So in terms of some of the big policy reports that you would be aware of, there is the SDG development report, you might know as the SDG dashboard, where we actually rank countries on their an SDG index, which by goal, we rank countries on their progress and indicator towards the SDGs. So we're the only organization that does that. So that's a very popular report, and it's done at regional levels and local levels as well. But the main report is the SDG dashboard. We also do the happiness report, which is coming out in a few weeks, which you might be aware of, and so on. In terms of the academy, there's 4 pillars to the academy. One is just content. So we've produced about 50 massive online courses, or MOOCs as we call them, and they're available on edX, this platform. The newest course coming out is very good, The Living Amazon. I think it's if we get a chance to play it or have a look at it, these are all free courses that you can do. But the one coming out, The Living Amazon, Science, Cultures, and Sustainability in Practice, is a very good example of how we mix science, policy, practice in the courses. But we also inject quite a nice bit of production. What I like about this Amazon, the Amazon panel MOOC, is that NGOs and government gave us a lot of zone footage and photographs from the Amazon. So we were actually able to integrate that into the filming and production of the MOOC. And I think it's very nice, and you can enroll on that. But there's 50 other courses. And just to know, and particularly for Emmanuel, everyone here, that you can tell us that you'd like the individual videos, like, so not rather than doing the whole course, you might like just lecture 1 or lecture 4. These are like 8 to 20-minute videos. And we can, of course, give you access to these, and you can download them and share them. So they're quite a useful resource. Now, obviously, they may not be, they're in English, unfortunately, and some are in Spanish, etc. I think the Amazon course is in 3 languages. It's in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. But obviously, you know, maybe with AI tools, maybe you're going to find it reasonably easy to actually translate into another language at will. But there is an opportunity to use our library and the 2,000 videos that are there and take the topic, if you like, and use it in your teaching or as a resource. Just because stuff is free doesn't mean it's used. So we've been working hard to mobilize content into university degrees, into professional training courses, and we've been putting it into what we call the learning management systems of governments. So in Ireland, for example, our Introduction to Sustainable Development by Sachs and Rockstrom is available to all teachers in Ireland who want, and they can take time off work to do them, and the government would give them a little bit of money. It's not expensive to do our courses anyway. The certification is only, I think, for the professional cert is about $100. But basically, the government recognizes it as continued professional development, and teachers can do training on the SDGs, and they can get the time off and also get pay. So that's kind of projects of mobilizing our content into the LMSs of governments. We're doing it for corporates. We're doing it for civil society. And that's one pillar of our work. We also work with communities of practice. So, for example, the MDT, the Masters in Development Practice programs across the world. Mission 4.7 is a partnership with UNESCO and the Ban Ki-moon Center, where we focus from preschool to K-12 into university, into lifelong learning, into the labor force, because most people working don't understand the SDGs, or it's not in their education that they learn to coexist with nature and with people. So in some ways, they all have to go back to school. And we're very much focused on lifelong learning and getting people back to school. And in some ways, the teachers here in this program are professional teachers and they're trained, but they realize they've got to go back to studies just to learn this knowledge so they can depart it to their students. And it's important because somehow we got disconnected from nature and society in the way we maybe focused on STEM too much. But this is the challenge on education for sustainable development or global citizenship. But Mission 4.7 is a partnership and it has resources there too that I'm sure you can use and get access to. Thought leadership, we're also engaging in UN meetings, publications, blogs, and different sorts of ways of actually making sure that governments start to fund and prioritize education for sustainable development. So it's not just a bottom-up movement, but at the end of the day, governments would take on board that their training of teachers and curriculum and their funding would actually help this transformation of education towards education for sustainable development. The guiding, I'll come to it in a second. There was a midpoint review of the SDGs that happened in the General Assembly in September 23, and the Irish government again and the Qatar government were the chairs or co-facilitators of this political declaration that came out of what's called the HLPF, which is under the auspices of the General Assembly every 4th year. This is the high-level political forum. This is the body that annually reviews all progress on the SDGs at kind of global and national and by different stakeholder groups, even down to local voluntary, what we call voluntary national reviews of governments, but even local voluntary reviews down to sort of local government level. People talk about how they've implemented or made progress on the outcomes or the SDGs or the targets, or the 169 targets of the SDGs. It was quite an achievement given the geopolitics at the moment and what's happening with the Permanent Five in the Security Council in terms of the geopolitics and wars that are happening. But I think the ambassadors, the academics, civil society, the bureaucrats across nations, they made sure that there was a recommitment of 193 countries to achieving the SDGs and the associated Paris Agreement and biodiversity agreements. The paragraph for education, which is basically our North Star, is this one, which is about obviously getting money, because we do need a lot more resources and funding put into education to make it inclusive and equitable and have quality education. And we have this lifelong learning opportunities. And of course, stressing early childhood education and so on. And also supporting the whole digital transformation of education, vocational training, teachers' continuous professional development, which you're doing in this program, but also the gender equality issues and so on, and mental health issues. So these were kind of the key aspects of the UN's Transforming Education Summit that happened in the General Assembly in 2022. But it's good that all countries of the world have signed up to this midpoint review, and this is the paragraph that's related to education for sustainable development. Just to say, this master's in UCD, which you might be interested in, is that you can go onto edX, you can take a few of our MOOCs. This is what the teachers are doing in Ireland to get a professional cert. It's quite cheap, but the 10 credits you earn there, you can actually get into a professional diploma, and you can add another 10 credits, and this is all online. And then if you have those, you can cash them in to an online Masters of Science, which is a Masters of Science in Sustainable Development done in partnership with the SDG Academy. It's a relatively cheap course, and like it's by the end of the Masters, it's about 10,000 euros. So not cheap to the individual, but there's a lot of agencies that would actually fund students to do this, which we do. And we do have 1 or 2 scholarships for Africa in particular. So something like 10 to 15% on this course are actually teachers who are upskilling and who want to learn to be professionally trained in sustainable development. The other big movement that we're involved in is UNESCO's SDSN Joint Committee on Open Education Resources. So in 2019, all governments of the world signed what's called a UNESCO recommendation on OER that they would provide free education resources at all levels of learning across, preschool to K-12, to university, up to lifelong learning. But obviously, how do you do this? And the project we're working on is taking all the public libraries of the world that have a digital repository, which is about 350,000, and we're trying to get open access resources to have them tagged and licensed and free to use so that people can repurpose and translate. And actually, we're providing a solution, to achieving this idea that you should have open education resources for the SDGs, rather, because we all know that's one part of schooling that can be expensive. School books, homeworks, copies, pens, exams, exam answers, they can actually be quite expensive. So the idea is to have this revolution where we actually open license provide folders and of courses and digital resources that can be used in education for sustainable development all over the world and can be repurposed and put back into the global knowledge commons, etc. This is also part of the digital compact I'll come back to, that's in our Summit of the Future, about open digital resources. So just to talk a little bit, that's just a background to SDSN and the SDG Academy if you're interested, and we're happy to support you in any way we can. Just in terms of a little lesson maybe, or some reflections on the SDGs. The first point that I think is important is that the SDGs didn't come out of nowhere. In a sense, when you look at the UN, it's a young organization in some ways. So everything evolves and everything. So starting with the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you can see important moments how the issue of the environment started to become more important and, in a sense, suddenly have equal status to what's happening to the economy, what's happening to society and to people, but to put planet and caring for nature and the health of oceans and soil and the air quality and climate change, that's been a gradual evolution in some ways, but it's always been there going back over time. So I think important moments are the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the first sort of UN conference on the environment in 1972, the Earth Summit. A very important definition is the Norwegian Prime Minister. She's a lady who wrote this document, Our Common Future, in 1987. And this is the sort of definition that guides us that, when we live on this earth, we should be leaving society and governance and livelihoods and also natural resources and the nature capital, let's call it. It should be left in as good a state as we find it. So we shouldn't be depleting resources and polluting and creating bad governance and bad societies and economies so that our children and children's children are in a worse position than we are. So the aim of sustainable development is, let's meet the needs of the present, but let's not compromise the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that's sort of the essence of sustainability in livelihoods, in societies, in environments, and in governance. That what we mean is that we're improving and developing them with an eye that future generations will inherit economic and political and societal structures and systems and environmental, let's say, resources in a good as nick or quality as we find them. And if anything, we should try and improve them for future generations. So the Earth, Rio 92 is another moment. Rio plus 20 is when we first started to think about the SDGs properly. And that actually came from Brazil and Colombia, the country, which started to say, rather than just thinking of development or human development, which was the big topic for the Millennium Development Goals, why not just have not just economic development and social development, like good access to education and health, but why not have sustainability in the environment? So give it an equal status to society outcomes, economic governance, and environmental outcomes. So these are the 4 dimensions of sustainable development. And it was in the Rio plus 20, the Future We Want document, that it was first stated that maybe there should be a universal agenda on sustainable development on these 4 dimensions that we should all adopt by 2015, which we did. So this was the Transforming Our World 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We adopted in 2015. And of course, as SDG 13, we have the climate goal, which was signed in Paris in December of that year as well. So this was a big year for multilateralism, where there was a lot of hope. And a lot of people thought this was just the starting point. But unfortunately, we had a number of setbacks. So along came, unfortunately, maybe Trump, who started to veto and not really pushing progress or funding the UN or pushing this concept of multilateralism or cooperation across nations. And you might add, well, why do we have to cooperate across nations? Well, we share the same ocean. There's one ocean. We share the same climate bowl. We share the same food systems. And unfortunately, they're getting very depleted. And we have to, humanity has to coordinate right across the world to protect nature and to make sure that we're not exploiting nature as a source and then using it as a sink just to get rid of pollution and so on. So the fact that we live on one planet and share an environmental system, unfortunately, means we do have to cooperate moving forward. And that's the essence of multilateralism. We also then had COVID-19, which set us back. And of course, now we have these wars that are certainly setting us back as well in terms of getting coordination across US, Europe, China, Africa, and so on to actually start caring for people and planet rather than these geopolitical divides and wars, which are very damaging to multilateral systems, but also to nature and also to all the people who are involved and all the innocents who are involved. So in 2021, I think the Secretary General wanted to accelerate progress on the SDGs, and he came up with a thing called our Common Agenda. So in a way, what he tried to do is to say, well, let's maybe focus on some key accelerators. Let's focus on finance. How do we finance this project? Let's focus on education, which is great because, you know, if you want peace and sustainable development, everyone has to be in school. Everyone should have a life of quality education in what you call primary school and elementary school and in high school. You should have access to university and lifelong learning. So in a world of, just to give you an example, in Ireland, where I live, 80% of women have some form of high level or university degree or third level degree, right? So this is basically saying that all men and women, everyone goes to primary, secondary school, and most people go to some form of third level. And it's that level of education means you can have peace and you can have prosperity and sustainable development. So education is probably one of the most important levers, but yet it's the one that, as was shown in the Transforming Education Summit, particularly after COVID, that they did a survey of students right across the world, I think 10-year-olds, and asked them just to read a paragraph and understand the paragraph in their own language. And something like 1 in 3 were not able to do that. So we are really at a point of underinvestment, and we need to work much, much harder in terms of resourcing education. But Aguilar-Aries focused on finance, on education, on peace processes and security, on empowerment of youth and stakeholders in the multilateral system, and also on a thing called UN reform. And all of these, we had the summit in the Transforming Education Summit in 23, we had the midpoint review in 2024, and now in September, we're working towards the Summit of the Future, where the UN system and its partners are asked to reimagine the future of multilateralism and the future of the UN. And also, it's really the future of the SDG project after 2030 is really part of this agenda. So this is where we are. I already described a little bit where SDSN and others were involved in the post-2015 agenda setting, which is in the 3 years between 2012 and 2015. So I have a little bit on the slides there about the role of the Open Working Group and the high-level panel of eminent persons and the role of SDSN and so on. But that census report is available in November 2014. The thing about the intergovernmental negotiations of the SDGs, for the first time, the major groups were invited in to, as part of the negotiations, so they could present and comment and organize side events. Now, they don't have signatory role. That's only the governments or the leaders of countries. But still, in terms of participation, there was new rules which came under the HLPF or the SDGs, which gave major groups like women and farmers and academics and unions and so on, they gave them a lot of power to be in meetings and to make representation and presentation and comment and to be in the side events, etc. And you could say they only had 12 desks, while countries had 193 desks at the table. But most countries are organized into regional groups. So a one-issue desk like academic and science a one-issue desk or even of the women's group, you can make a lot of progress by working with the leaders of regional groupings. And I think Ambassador Kamau and Ambassador Donoghue said that civil society and the major groups were actually very important to get a consensus document, and they added a lot of very good comments and materials into creating this very nice document that you should all read. It's written very well, Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The Transforming Our World document, it's not just the goals and the target. It does have a preamble and a vision and a narrative, which sets out some key principles, which are important, like leave no one behind, for example. It also has the 17 goals and targets and 169 targets. Most importantly, it has the means of implementing this agenda, the MOIs. So it does talk about finance and education and partnerships and data and so on. And it does have the follow-up and review mechanism at governance at global levels, but it encourages at more regional, national levels for governments to put in place consultative processes and ways of actually monitoring and setting goals for the SDGs, implementing and monitoring progress. So there is a governance piece there as well in this document. And most importantly, while in the Millennium Development Goals, the duty bearer, I think, was government, was particularly the government of the developing world to implement human development. In this agenda, it's all people everywhere, and they are very clear that it's government, but also people, local authorities, and the corporate and scientific and academic communities. But really, the responsibility for implementing this project is all people everywhere. In terms of the goals, there's the first 7 are like Millennium Development Goals Plus, I call them. So they're like the goals for households or society. Then in the red, we have the goals for the economic dimension, which obviously incorporates society and environment as well, but it's more focused on the economic dimension. We have the environmental dimension in green, which is goal 13, which is basically climate. And then we have oceans, and then land and goal 15. And then lastly, peace and good institutions and global partnerships are the governance instruments. So this is the way I think of social dimensions, economic dimensions, environmental and governance dimensions. But at the end of the day, it's important that all goals are achieved simultaneously. And what you're trying to do is have synergies between economic policies that, yes, create prosperity and economic opportunity, but also induce a spillover or linkage that is beneficial to society and the environment and induces good governance. And this is the whole thing behind this agenda, is that sort of framework. In terms of the means of implementation, technology, finance, data, partnerships, science policy interface, professional training, education, follow-up and review and governance in all institutions. A lot of when you go to the UN websites, they seem to be working on and emphasizing these means of implementing or enablers or capacity builders. But the reason why is that the MOIs are a big part of the SDG agenda. And of course, orientating finance to sustainable development, orientating technologies and data and partnerships and education. These are not easy. These are quite difficult pieces of work, but they're very important to accelerate the agenda. So in kind of summary, it's a universal agenda. Why? Because all countries everywhere have to do it, or all people everywhere, all universities, all corporates everywhere have to do it. It's a transformative agenda because we're not talking about moving from the status quo and transitioning to something sustainable. We actually realize there's going to be quite a lot of creative destruction here. Some things have to go, like fossil fuel, and that means jobs will go and companies will fail. But then what will replace them in renewable energies is new people, new jobs. So it's going to be quite a huge, what we call Schumpeterian wave, or structural change or transformative change that has to happen in economic systems and energy systems in urban areas, in education, and so on, and digital transformation. That it's not just a transition project, it's a transformation, it's a transformative agenda. And that's what we mean by that. We're asked to leave no one behind, which basically means not to cherry pick, to make sure the poorest of the poor are thought about, and that this is an agenda for everyone, and it shouldn't just benefit the top 50 or 60 or 70 or 80%. It has to benefit everyone. And that the agenda, not just universal, is indivisible, meaning that you have to achieve all goals simultaneously. There's no point being a leader, like a lot of European and the US, maybe they're a leader on the economic goals, they do well on the social goals, but they're not doing well on the environmental goals. And maybe they're not doing well on some of the partnership goals either. This agenda, you have to achieve on the 4 dimensions of sustainable development. So it's an indivisible agenda, and it's for every country everywhere. Okay, just some videos. I just very quickly, some economists like to make things very neat. This is donut economics saying, like, we've got to transform our economies so that we stay within planetary boundaries and we're built on a good social protection floor. Now, this is something where we want to get to. I agree with this, but where we are at the moment, unfortunately, a lot of economic activity does create social inequality or even exploit social inequality, and it does exploit the environment or cause damage to the environment. So, you know, the donut, to me at the moment, the donut is in, if you take the donut and you crumble it, this is where we are at the moment, and we've got to put the donut back together. Some scientists like to emphasize that the foundation stone or the foundation block has to be the environmental issues like land, air, and water. But in reality, you know, I could make an argument that governance is the most important thing, and that if you don't have the right governance and the right plans and implementation and monitoring, you won't really achieve protection of the environment or societal or economic outcomes. So in a sense, this wedding cake, as they call it, is not true. I think each dimension has to be taken as equally important in all decision makings. And that's why, going back to the original document and the original work of UNDESA, the way the targets are actually defined, if you read them, they look for these linkages or synergies between each of the goals and targets and the other targets, right? So in other words, that for any particular economic policy, that you've got to link it to all the social issues, environmental issues, and governance issues, and vice versa. And you've got to have these positive spillovers or synergies, right? So when you're thinking of a particular issue, you'd be surprised that you can take any issue in a school or any policy and you say, what are the social, what are the economic, environmental, and governance dimensions of this issue? And just to make sure that you're not damaging or doing harm or creating a negative spillover by not actually thinking about the sort of interaction of these dimensions. And in a way, when everybody in a household, everyone in a government, in a university, in a corporate, everyone in power starts to look for these synergies, it will all add up to a world that is prosperous, that has social equality, that's protecting the environment, that has good governance. But this can only be done with every step and every decision by every individual. And that's why this agenda is complex in that way. The common agenda, I'm near the end, the common agenda, I think what was interesting when we were at the peak of multilateralism, and obviously we had some setbacks, and Guterres wanted to accelerate the program. And for the first time, and this has been happening in the UN since 2021, people are just becoming more aware of the dystopian futures, as we call them, right? In the sense that, you know, there is a very good reason why civil society and everyone across the world has to start coordinating and working towards the SDGs, because the reality is, if we look at these 4 dystopian futures, it is not going well. Like what's happening with climate change is not going well, with biodiversity loss is not going well, with plastic in the oceans, with zoonotic diseases. So we're getting very clear signals from nature that we're attacking nature. And of course, we will lose the war with nature. Nature will always win this war. And it will actually, in a sense, turn on us, and actually we will lose. So we have to, this is why it's getting very serious with the way we treat the environment as a source and as a sink, and we have to coordinate and work together globally to reverse the negative impact of humanity on biodiversity, climate, on the pollution of our air, water, and land, and also in our interactions with nature in terms of diseases, etc. We also know that inequality in education, inequality across ethnic groups, inequality in terms of digital access, we also know that's growing and it's getting worse. And the AI is going to even make these outcomes worse again. We have to work harder on dealing with structural inequalities between and within nations. We have to work much harder on post-conflict situations, on famine, on dealing with young people, making sure that the population grows, that there's opportunities for all young people to strive and to do well and have a life of dignity. And finally, what's obviously becoming very obvious is we're living in Oppenheimer's world, as we say, with nuclear weapons. And unfortunately, the threat of nuclear war, cybersecurity, the geopolitics that's happening in Ukraine and Gaza and in China, etc. These are situations that could ruin the UN, that could ruin humanity. So these dystopian futures have to be avoided. And the only plan we have to avoiding these dystopian futures is for all countries and all stakeholders at all levels of governance, meaning global, regional, national level. We have to start working and coordinating on achieving the SDGs, the Paris Agreement, the coming Montreal Biodiversity Framework, which is really about setting aside land and sea and marine protected areas and proportions of the high sea, giving it back to nature, 30-30 by 30% by 2030, but maybe 50 or even larger amounts by 2050. These agendas don't say much about refugees and migrants, but there was, the year after the SDGs were signed, again, David Donahue, with a co-facilitator, negotiated the New York Declaration, which is the first time there's a global framework or an agreement across nations on how refugees and migrants should be treated. And I think this is something that needs to be thought about and integrated back into the agenda. So there is the new political declaration that happened, people recommitting to these legal and political agendas. But just to say a little bit finally about the Summit of the Future. So the Summit of the Future is it's the last part, I think, of the common agenda. And it's about people reaffirming their commitment to the UN Charter and to working under international law, to reinvigorate multilateralism, to make sure that people understand in this multipolar world that we have to start cooperating and helping each other and not competing with each other on technology or military or economic power, but actually to cooperate so no one's left behind, and that we look after nature and look after everyone. So we have to build a lot more trust and so on. The big topics they've organized in the Summit of the Future are financing sustainable development, international peace and security issues like reforming the Security Council, again, science, technology, innovation, and the digital compact to understand how science, technology, innovation, and particularly now the digital sort of things like AI, how they can be used for good and not for war. Like, we need to deploy them to achieve the SDGs, not to do anything else. We need to empower future generations. In other words, leave the world behind in a better shape than we find it. And finally, there's going to be recommendations for transforming global governance, make the World Bank and the IMF more coherent and interoperable with the UN, for example, because at the moment they've different mandates with different types of financing, etc. So there could be very simple reforms that give citizens more power in the multilateral system, that bit more coordination across the G20, for example, in what they do with the UN 2030 agenda. So there'll be lots of recommendations how to improve global governance and improve multilateralism, or basically deal with structural inequalities globally and with protection of nature. And I've left some of the files there that you can have a look at. So there's some of their handles for the SDG Academy. You can get in touch with us, no problem. And like I say, in your Teach4SDGs program, we have no problem supplying videos or open education resources or mentoring or any sort of advice, because we really realize the importance of teachers and this idea of bringing a global agenda into the classroom for the future generations. I think there's no better project than what you're doing at the moment. So thank you for your time.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Professor Paul. Thank you for this insightful session and speech which you shared with us this evening. We are so grateful and delighted to have you in our midst, opening this ceremony for the Teach4SDGs program for 3. And once again, on behalf of the leadership of AIIDEV, we want to say thank you and we appreciate your presence. And congratulations to all the educators that got finally onboarded to this program. I believe some of them have a question in line to the lessons which Prof has shared this evening. Should you have a question, please do use the comment section to ask your question. We appreciate you use the comment section on the YouTube platform to ask your question in line to what Prof has actually shared with us this evening. And for each and every one, we can take track of what your questions are on YouTube and get to share with Prof here as well. But if there is no question, I can see a lot of appreciation, Professor Paul. A lot of people are saying thank you for the amazing and amazing opening lecture. Okay, and I'm still waiting for questions for Professor Paul. And if there are no questions from our educators, I would like to assume that, okay, I can see a question from Abner. He said, teachers are the very tool to be used to reach students and communicate the grassroots in implementing the SDGs. In implementing these SDGs, my question is, what measure could be taken for adequate implementation? Would you like to speak to that?
What measures to be effective in this approach? Is it for teachers?
Yes, in the implementation.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think, a program like this, this is for me, this is a teacher's self-help type program, in the sense that, you have decided that the SDGs are out there. You've decided that, your students should know these topics and these issues. and you take it on yourself in your own time to actually invest and learn these issues. And then, of course, you go back into the classrooms, and then with the students, you can do projects. You can, obviously have to reimagine how these actually relate to your local context, your local cultures and languages, and so on. And that's not an easy task, but it's obviously something you do day to day. So it's very good. So a program like this is just so important, but it is putting the responsibility on, let's say, an entrepreneurial or innovative or a teacher that really has some concern about the planet, and they should depart this to their students. In reality, hopefully in the future and in the near future, governments will come along and they'll actually say, you know what, we have to take teachers out of a class, we have to invest in them, we have to make sure they do some training that we fund, and they would help them with the curriculum. And in a sense, if you like, the system would change where all teachers would actually engage in this, if you like, upskilling and training, and that the curriculum would change for everyone, and that the students would engage in this type of curriculum everywhere. So that's the dream. But at the moment, what we're getting is, entrepreneurial, let's call them teachers, who are saying, no, this needs to start now. And it is important because they are a force for change. They should talk, obviously, to their principals, who should talk to people in the ministries, who should say, look, this is happening. We need to support it. We need to resource it, and it needs to happen at scale. But this sort of bottom-up or more grassroots approach is actually really, really important as a first step, even though a lot of the work and the responsibility falls on the shoulders of some of the people in this program. But that's just to be respected and to be celebrated. So hopefully I've answered the question well. So I'm just talking about the process of, doing it as an extracurricular activity to then driving it mainstream. And, you can learn the issues and the way of thinking, but you have to apply it and learn to apply it in your own context with the students. That's the actual process, and that's what can be difficult. So I see Eddie Joseph has asked a question. The Nigerian system promotes and emphasizes for certification. How do we use the SDG Academy program to discourage this trend or encourage? So is this a question, what do you think, Emmanuel? Is this a question that's saying that certification is problematic, or it's actually saying that this is quite a necessary step, right? So I'm kind of thinking that if students or teachers are on this journey, that it's actually a good idea that there is certification that comes from various entities, right? It just actually validates that they have certain knowledge and they've done the program. And I think certification is very useful. And I'm quite happy to work with you in terms of the SDG Academy could work with you in terms of certification. But it would be great to get to a point where the ministries of education are obviously providing time off and even money to help people upskill and get certification, so that they're ready to transform the curriculum and to actually localize and put into context the whole SDGs in the classroom for their students.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Prof, for those profound explanation which you've shared with us this evening. And we sincerely appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much for the time you spent with us this evening. Yeah. And I know over and over, every time which we reach out to you, you are ever available to support and share more expertise and knowledge with our teachers. Thank you very much, and our esteemed appreciation to the SDG Academy at large.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Look after yourselves. Yeah. Talk soon.
Enjoy the rest of your day, sir. Dear educators, we believe that this has been a very good start, and to each and everyone that have been asking one question, most especially when you're asking a question in line to certification, I know that it's just a norm in which we find ourselves, most especially across African countries. We are mostly concerned about certificates, we are concerned about money, but you are not concerned about the knowledge at first and the application of that knowledge. I've seen a lot of people that also certificates have like over 20 certifications, and practically they have nothing to show for this. And knowledge based, it's very important. The application of this learnings, it's very important. Why am I saying this? I can see some people in the comment section asking some things. I'm going to respond to each and every of those sessions, which has to do with the program structure. And Teach4SDGs is not a program that the organization is paying money. We are not paying anybody for this. And instead, we are empowering with knowledge, we are empowering with resources, which you can get to advance your expertise as an educator at any stage which you are, and wherever you are from, whichever community which you are from. We believe that as educators, we all have a primary role to play. We all have a primary role to play in achieving the SDGs. And beyond that, I saw someone asking a question as regards the issues of curriculum in Nigeria and talking about the aspect of Federal Ministry of Education. I'm trying to get that question because I really feel to say something about it. It starts from each and every one of us. We must not wait. We must not wait for the government. You have to start on your own. Yeah, I remember there are some stakeholders meeting I've attended last year, and they said they proposed to revise the curriculum in Nigeria for over 5 years, and this has been in discussion. I won't say that you might be surprised that they even released the fund for that, but let's forget about that. What we are here for is to empower the teachers and basically for you to acquire more knowledge, for you to acquire more expertise in line to the activities of the SDGs, whereby you can also effectively teach your students and whereby you can integrate this to your teaching practices. Yeah, like I said, we are not going to wait for the government. If you are waiting for the government, we are not going to be doing this Teach4SDGs by now, because there are deliberations which we've had with the government for over a year now as regards to Teach4SDGs, which is still pending. So we are not waiting for the government. You must not wait for the government to do anything to make a change in your community. The change starts from you. The development starts from each and every one of us. Within our classroom, just like the co-founder on project and administration said earlier, we are all heroes and we have a role to play in achieving that impact, in making that impact. So within your classroom, whichever subject which you are teaching, you can make an impact. I remember when I was very young, one of my lecturers always do something. Whenever it comes to class, we start with a motivation, and those motivations makes us till today. You as a teacher, when you teach, it starts from, you can have your own principle of teaching. You can have your own modality of teaching. I know there are rules and regulations to it across public and private schools, private schools. However, there is a room, you have a role to play. And yeah, I know when it comes to federal government, state government, local government, then we get it right. Across different countries in Africa, we'll definitely get it right. But be patient and enjoy the very best of this program. And we can assure you, this program is going to be a life transforming event for you. We have over 3,000 teachers across 35 African countries that have enrolled in this program. And the story keeps getting better and better and better. And new modules keep coming up. Like I earlier said, this program is something that is designed to educate us, to provide us with the knowledge, skills, and resources which you can get to effectively teach our students. And most importantly, whereby we ourselves can be acquainted with the knowledge of the SDGs. And I believe I've said enough regarding this. And basically, my role this evening is to just talk about the program timeline and for this program, which is between the month of March and the last week of May. I want to believe that each and every one of us have downloaded the program guide that was shared with us via email. Just like Madam Adiola earlier said, we have the advanced training session, which we've already started. Prof has already laid a foundation to it. We are still going to have sessions on education for sustainable development. We are still going to have sessions on climate, renewable energy, green economy. We are going to have sessions on digital technology and power skills for educators, various sessions, which are sessions that are going to transform you, which definitely aligns to what each and every one of us are doing across our respective schools. And the second phase of the program, okay, maybe I should just share my screen in a minute as we're about to also round up the session. The two phases of this program start with the workshop series, and the second phase is the SDG activation and evaluation. And this is very important for each and every educators to participate actively. And as thank God, I think the modules are already there, which the program managers are already shared with us. What we are going to be expecting in all other sessions, these are already stated there clearly. And the current phase which we are is the phase one, which is a workshop series, and that started today and is going to end that 29th of March. 29th of March. Basically, we are going to be having our trainings on Thursdays and Friday, 4 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. in the evening. But today is not going to end at 6:30. We are going to end the session in the next 5 to 10 minutes. But most importantly, this workshop series it's very important for each and every educator. It's very important for you to participate actively in all the workshop series. And also, the videos are ever on YouTube. You can always go back to watch. You always see the email communication. You see the links for the previous classes. The videos are there for you to watch over and over and over again. And once we are done with workshop series, we are going to have a post-assessment of what we've learned at the workshop. And we move to the phase two, which is the SDG activation and evaluation. And the SDG activation and evaluation is practically we taking further the experience, the knowledge we've gained in this program and engaging with our students across our respective schools. We are going to share more information, most especially during this SDG activation workshop series. That's where you are going to learn more about how you can get to implement the SDGs in your school, how you can implement, how you can integrate these to your teaching curriculum and, teaching practice. Don't let me use the word curriculum because, you can't change your curriculum as we speak. We have organizations, we have commissions that are in charge of that regulation and things that have to do with curriculum. But how you can also use that to upskill your teaching practices. So that's very important. And we are going to have a competition for the students. And this we are also going to share with you as we move on in the course of the program. The report submission, and each and every educator is going to submit a report which entails the project you carried out in your school. And I think I have to say this because sometimes we've seen some educators that they had this energy when they started the program, and during the course of the SDG activation program, they couldn't complete the program and they had to rejoin the next cohort. We would like such situation to happen to each and everyone on this call. We want to ensure that nobody is left behind. We try as much as possible to also make further impact in your schools, in your respective schools. And as part of that, there's an introduction lecture that is always given to each and every educator that you can present to your school authority, and if there is a need for that. So there's an introduction lecture introducing the program, introducing what we're about to do. And at the end of it all, we are going to have the impact evaluation, and successful educators are going to be notified at the end of the program. That's 27th of May. And we are going to be having a graduation and certification 30th of May. Like I said, it's very, very important for each and every one of us to take note of this date. We are very keen about it. Our mode of communication for now is going to be strictly email. We appreciate you keep to your email. We always hear from our email communication officers. They get to communicate with you via email. And if you have any inquiry, if you have any special request, there's an Ask Me form that is going to be shared with you in the next email. You can use that to submit your request or ask any question you want to ask. Should in case you sent an email and you didn't get any response quickly, please just use the Ask Me form. It's easy for us to track information on the Ask Me form. But most importantly, we appreciate you try as much as possible to be formal enough and in a very good and professional tone, you get to ask or make your inquiries. And I believe those are the basic information I have to share for this evening for each and every one of us. I don't know if there's anyone that has a question. I'm very available to quickly take questions as regards. Okay, most private schools. Okay, I'm seeing some questions. I'm just trying to see if there are any questions in line to what has been asked. I know some of us want to be on WhatsApp group. Some of us wants to be on WhatsApp group. Definitely, we are going to add you to the Teach4SDGs Educators Network. Like I said, we have network across different African countries, and these are people that you can live with, you can bond with, you can learn with, and you can connect with. And I'm trying to see if there are questions. Okay, I can see a very important question here. That's in a school that have more than one educator as a school. Did they write? And yeah, you are going to write your report individually. You have to submit your report individually. Very, very important, because you are going to be graded individually. So please try as much as possible to note this. And our sessions are just going to, okay, we have 4 more sessions. That's tomorrow. Sorry, 5 more sessions tomorrow, next week Thursday, next week Friday, upper week Thursday, and upper week Friday. Those are the 5 more sections which we have. And we promise that this is going to be engaging and this is going to be enlightening. And we look forward to your active engagement across board. At this point, I want to believe that we all have clear answers, but if you still require further clarification or information, you can do well and use the Ask Me form that's going to be shared with you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, every educator. And once again, congratulations to every educator that has been accepted and that has the opportunity to, you can collaborate with educators or in other countries. That's highly welcome. And tomorrow we are going to send the link to the YouTube session tomorrow, whereby you can also join the same time, 4 p.m. and we get to communicate with that other information. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to meeting you tomorrow and enjoy the rest of your evening. Tomorrow is 4 p.m. I can see people asking time. The time for tomorrow's session is 4 p.m. GMT +1. For people joining from other countries, people joining from Kenya and some other countries, the time is 4 p.m. GMT +1. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye for now.
We can be.
We must be the first generation
to end extreme poverty.
The generation
most determined
to fight injustice
and inequalities.
The generation that saves the planet from climate change.
And this is how it will get done.
The global goals
A 15-year plan
for everyone, everywhere.
with no one left behind.
We will live in a world
where nobody
anywhere lives in extreme poverty.
Where no one
goes hungry.
where no one wakes in the morning
Asking if there will be food today.
We will live in a world where no child has to die.
Diseases we know how to cure.
and where proper health care
is a lifelong right for us all.
We will live in a world where
Everyone goes to school.
And education gives us the knowledge
And skills
for a fulfilling life.
we will live in a world where all girls and all women have equal opportunities
To thrive and be powerful and safe.
We cannot succeed if half the world is headed back.
We will live in a world
where all people can get clean water
And proper toilets
At home, at school, and at work.
We will live in a world where
there's sustainable energy for everyone.
Heat, light,
And power for the whole planet.
without destroying the planet.
We'll live in a world where economies prosper.
And new wealth
lead to decent jobs.
for everyone.
And we will live in a world where our industry,
our infrastructure
And our
best innovations.
Are not just used to make money, but to make all our lives better.
We will live in a world
where prejudices and extremes of inequality
Are defeated.
inside our countries and between different countries.
Where people live in cities and communities
that are safe, progressive,
and support everyone who lives there.
where we replace
What we consume.
Planet where we put back
What we take out of the earth.
We live in a world that is decisively rolling back.
climate change.
where we restore
and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
will restore
And protect life on land.
The forests.
animals, the earth itself.
with peace between and inside countries.
where all governments are open.
And answer to us for what they do at home and abroad.
And the justice rules.
with everyone equal before the law.
Where all countries and we their people.
Work together.
Partnerships of all kinds.
To make these goals a reality.
For everyone, everywhere.
These are the United Nations global goals
For sustainable development.
Let's get to work. Let's make it happen.